You know that feeling when you're flipping through a streaming service, looking for a classic episode of your favorite sitcom, and something feels off? Like an episode you swear you remember watching as a kid just isn't there anymore. No trace of it. Not in the reruns, not on DVD, not anywhere. Well, you're not imagining things. Today we're counting down 12 sitcom storylines that were quietly pulled from rotation, banned from reruns, or buried so deep that networks hoped you'd forget they ever existed. And trust us, some of these will surprise you. Number 12. Married with Children. I'll See You in Court. Now, Married with Children was never what you'd call subtle. Fox's flagship sitcom spent 11 seasons gleefully offending everyone within broadcasting range, and audiences loved every minute of it. Al Bundy insulting customers at the shoe store, Peggy ignoring housework, Kelly being Kelly, and Bud being perpetually unlucky in love. The Bundys were proudly, defiantly terrible, and that was the whole point. But even by Married with Children standards, the Season 3 episode, I'll See You in Court, was something else entirely. The premise involves Al and Peg discovering that the motel where they once tried to rekindle their romance has been secretly videotaping guests in the bedroom. The Bundys, along with their neighbors Steve and Marcy, decide to sue the motel. And the episode goes exactly where you think it goes, pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable for network television in 1989 with jokes and implied content that made network censors at Fox reach for the aspirin bottle. Fox pulled it before it ever aired. Just like that, a completed episode, fully produced and ready to go, vanished from the schedule without a word. Now, here is where it gets interesting. The episode didn't air in the United States until 2002, more than a decade after it was filmed. It had already circulated overseas and among fans through bootleg copies, becoming one of the most sought-after pieces of Bundy mythology in the process. When it finally aired, the reaction was essentially, that's it? Years of build-up and audiences had already seen far worse on cable. But the fact remains, Fox got spooked, pulled the episode, and left it on the shelf for 13 years. In the world of network television in the late 80s, even the most outrageous show had a ceiling, and for one brief moment, the Bundys hit it. Number 11. All in the Family. Edith's 50th birthday. All in the Family changed television forever. We all know that. Norman Lear's masterpiece turned the American living room into a battleground for social commentary, and made Archie Bunker one of the most complicated characters in sitcom history. The show tackled racism, feminism, and class in ways that made audiences deeply uncomfortable and kept them coming back anyway. But there is one episode that went further than any other, darker than anything the show had attempted before. In the season, 8-episode titled Edith's 50th Birthday, which aired in 1977. Edith Bunker is nearly sexually assaulted in her own home by a man posing as a police officer, while Archie and the gang are next door at her surprise birthday party. The attack is interrupted before it is completed, but what is depicted on screen is harrowing, even by today's standards. Gene Stapleton's performance is extraordinary, raw, and terrifying, in a way that a comfort food sitcom had absolutely no business being. CBS aired it once. And then the rerun requests started pouring in from domestic violence organizations who wanted to use the episode as an educational tool, which sounds like a win. Except that CBS was deeply reluctant to rebroadcast it, concerned about the content and the advertiser reaction. The episode became notoriously difficult to find for years, cycling in and out of syndication, depending on the market. Some stations simply refused to run it. It exists today as proof that All in the Family was playing a completely different game than every other sitcom on the air. But don't expect to stumble across it between episodes of The Jeffersons on a Sunday afternoon. Number 10. Different Strokes. Benez-moi, the Bicycle Man. Now, before we get to number 1, which also involves Different Strokes, we need to stop here at number 10, because this show earns multiple spots on this list, and both of them are earned for deeply uncomfortable reasons. Different Strokes in its early seasons was charming, warm, and genuinely funny. Gary Coleman's Arnold Jackson was one of the great child characters in television history, and the show had a real heart underneath the comedy. But somewhere along the way, someone at NBC decided the show should become a vehicle for very special episodes that tackled serious social issues. Most of those episodes were well-intentioned. And then there was The Bicycle Man. This two-part episode from season 5, which aired in 1983, features a friendly neighborhood bicycle shop owner named Mr. Horton, who befriends Arnold and his friend Dudley. The character played by Gordon Jump, better known as station manager Arthur Carlson on WKRP in Cincinnati, invites the boys to his apartment, gives them wine, and shows them inappropriate magazines. The episode was specifically designed as a warning about child predators and sexual abuse. NBC worked with experts to craft the content responsibly, and in that regard, The Bicycle Man succeeded. It genuinely educated a generation of kids and parents about grooming behavior in a way that had never been done on network television before, but the subject matter made it nearly impossible to rerun comfortably. Watching a beloved character from another sitcom play a predator is jarring in a way that doesn't get easier with time. The episode largely disappeared from syndication, too intense and too specific to slot comfortably between lighthearted episodes about Arnold getting into mischief at school. Number 9. WKRP in Cincinnati. The music rights wipeout. Here is one that has nothing to do with content and everything to do with money, which in some ways makes it even more frustrating. WKRP in Cincinnati ran from 1978 to 1982 and is genuinely one of the sharpest, funniest workplace sitcoms ever made. The show about a struggling Cincinnati radio station was stuffed wall to wall with actual popular music, which made complete sense since the entire premise revolved around a radio station trying to switch formats to rock and roll. The music wasn't background noise. It was part of the DNA of the show, and that is exactly why almost the entire run of WKRP in Cincinnati effectively disappeared for years. When the show was originally produced, the music licensing was cleared for broadcast, not for home video or syndication in perpetuity. Fast forward to the home video era, and suddenly the cost of relicensing every song in every episode became astronomical. The solution? Strip the music out and replace it with generic background tracks that have all the soul of elevator music in the dentist's waiting room. Entire storylines that hinged on specific songs playing at specific moments suddenly made no sense. Jokes lost their punchlines. The emotional resonance evaporated. For years, fans of the show were stuck with this hollowed-out version that felt like watching a great movie with the soundtrack replaced by someone humming. Some episodes were so dependent on their original music that they essentially became unwatchable in syndication. Not banned exactly, but quietly gutted until they were unrecognizable. If you grew up watching WKRP and reruns in the late 80s, there is a good chance you never actually saw the real version of the show. Number 8. Soap. The show America tried to cancel before it even started. Speaking of shows that had trouble making it to air, let's talk about Soap, the ABC primetime parody that nearly got banned before a single frame of it was ever broadcast. Soap premiered in 1977 as a parody of daytime soap operas and followed two sisters, their families, and a collection of supporting characters through storylines involving infidelity, demonic possession, aliens, and a main character who was openly gay at a time when that representation was virtually non-existent on American television. The advanced publicity generated protests from religious groups, community organizations, and concerned parents across the country who had not actually seen a single episode. ABC received over 30,000 letters of complaint before the premiere. Affiliates in several markets refused to carry it at all. The American Council for Better Broadcasts called it the most controversial program in the history of television. And then it aired and turned out to be genuinely brilliant. The show ran for 4 seasons before ABC canceled it in 1981 on a massive cliffhanger that was never resolved. That is its own crime. But the real legacy of Soap is how thoroughly it was buried afterward. The controversy made it a liability in syndication. Certain storylines, particularly those involving its gay character Jody, played by Billy Crystal in one of his earliest major roles, made stations nervous. The show essentially fell off the face of the television universe for years, available only to those dedicated enough to seek it out. A genuinely groundbreaking piece of television history, quietly boxed up and forgotten. Number 7. Roseanne. The Blackout Halloween episodes and the Florida Vacation. Roseanne was appointment television throughout the late 80s and early 90s. The Connor family felt real in a way that few sitcom families ever have, and the show's willingness to address working-class struggles with honesty gave it a weight that most of its competitors couldn't match. But the later seasons got strange, and one storyline in particular has become almost impossible to find. In the later run of the series, Roseanne took the Connor family to a beach resort in a vacation arc that critics and fans found jarring and tonally inconsistent with everything that had made the show great. This was during the period when Roseanne Barr had significant creative control, and the show was veering into increasingly surreal territory that culminated in the notorious 9th season, revealed that much of the series had been fictionalized by Roseanne's character as a novel. Various episodes from the later seasons cycle in and out of streaming availability with very little consistency or explanation. Some simply aren't there. The show's complicated legacy following Barr's public controversies has made the entire catalog a headache for networks and streaming platforms, trying to decide what to carry and what to quietly shelve. Roseanne is a case study in how a star's off-screen reputation can retroactively complicate a body of work that had genuine cultural importance. The Connor family deserved better than to become a licensing puzzle that platforms quietly solve by making certain seasons harder to find than others. Number 6. Good Times, the Heroine two-parter. Good Times was groundbreaking television. As we have mentioned in previous videos, John Amos and Esther Rawls brought real dignity and emotional weight to the Evans family, and the show at its best was a genuine portrayal of Black working-class life in Chicago that had never been seen on network television before. And in season 4, the show went somewhere almost no sitcom had gone before or since. The two-part episode titled The Heroine Story aired in 1976 and followed Michael Evans, the youngest son, as he becomes involved with a friend who is addicted to heroin. The episodes don't soften the edges. They show the reality of addiction in a public housing project, with a directness that felt less like a sitcom and more like a public service documentary. The episodes were praised by social workers, educators, and community organizations. They were exactly the kind of television that Norman Lear had built his reputation on: unsparing, honest, and deeply human. And then they essentially vanished from syndication. The combination of subject matter and the specific depiction of drug use made local affiliates deeply reluctant to air them outside of the original broadcast context. Good Times in syndication became a version of the show without its sharpest teeth. The funny episodes, the ones with JJ shouting dynamite, those aired constantly. The episodes that showed why the show actually mattered, those got quiet shelved. It's the television equivalent of reading a great novel with every difficult chapter removed. You get the jokes, but miss the point entirely. Number 5. Three's Company, The Crisis. Three's Company is one of those shows that seems lightweight on the surface. 3 roommates, a nosy landlord, and an endless series of misunderstandings about who is sleeping with whom. But underneath the slapstick was surprisingly sharp comedy, and the show was a massive ratings juggernaut throughout its run from 1977 to 1984. However, there is an episode from the later seasons that dealt with a subject matter so specific and so sensitive that it essentially became radioactive for rerun purposes. The Crisis tackled the subject of a character contemplating suicide following a serious personal loss. The episode was intended to be a thoughtful, responsible portrayal of a very real issue, and by the standards of a show best known for Jack Tripper falling over furniture, it was remarkably sincere. The problem is that Three's Company in syndication was sold, marketed, and scheduled as pure comfort food. Stations that licensed the show were expecting the one where everyone misunderstands a phone call. They were not expecting a story about suicide ideation dropping into the middle of a lazy Sunday afternoon rerun block. The episode quietly disappeared from most syndication packages. Stations that purchased the rights to the show found it much simpler to skip over it entirely. than to figure out how to program it responsibly. It became one of those episodes that hardcore fans of the show discuss in hushed tones. The one that doesn't fit. The one that isn't there when you go looking for it. A genuine attempt at something more meaningful, buried precisely because it succeeded. Number 4. The Golden Girls, The Mud Mask, episode. Now, here is one that will genuinely surprise people who think of The Golden Girls as the perfectly preserved, universally beloved sitcom that can do no wrong. And look, we love The Golden Girls. Sophia's one-liners alone are worth the price of admission, and the show's willingness to address aging, sexuality, and friendship with honesty was decades ahead of its time. But there is an episode called Mixed Blessings from season 3 that contains a scene that NBC has worked very hard to quietly memory hole. In the episode, Dorothy's son Michael announces he is marrying a much older black woman, which sets up a conversation about interracial relationships and prejudice. It is, for the most part, a thoughtful and well-handled episode, except for one scene in which Blanche and Rose answer the door wearing mud face masks, and the visual gag that follows was considered deeply offensive and racially insensitive even at the time of original broadcast in 1987. The episode was quietly removed from the Hulu streaming library in 2020 after renewed scrutiny of such imagery in classic television. Joining a growing list of episodes from beloved shows that were pulled not because of their overall message, but because of specific moments that haven't aged well. The Golden Girls is one of the most rewatched shows in television history. The fact that even it has episodes too complicated to simply slot into a streaming queue is a reminder that no television era, no matter how beloved, was producing content in a vacuum. Everything reflects the moment it was made, for better and sometimes for worse. Number 3. Seinfeld, The Puerto Rican Day. Seinfeld spent 9 seasons establishing itself as the definitive sitcom of the 1990s. The show about nothing turned out to be about everything, and its influence on comedy is so vast it's almost impossible to overstate. Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer navigated New York City with a sociopathic detachment that was somehow deeply relatable, and the show very rarely missed. But in season 9, it missed badly enough that NBC pulled the episode from reruns almost immediately. The Puerto Rican Day, which aired in May of 1998, featured the gang getting stuck in traffic during the Puerto Rican Day parade. The episode culminates in a scene where Kramer accidentally sets fire to a Puerto Rican flag, and then stomps on it to put out the flames. Protests from Puerto Rican advocacy groups were swift and pointed. The National Puerto Rican Coalition called the episode a disgrace. NBC pulled the episode from its summer rerun schedule just days after its original broadcast. It didn't air again for years. When it finally returned to circulation in the early 2000s, it came with a disclaimer acknowledging that the episode contained offensive material. Here is the strange postscript. The Seinfeld cast and crew were largely blindsided by the reaction. Writer David Mandel later said the intent was never to mock Puerto Ricans as a people, but to satirize the chaos of parade traffic. The distinction apparently felt insufficient to a significant number of viewers, and one of the most successful sitcoms in television history had its first and only episode pulled from rerun rotation. Even a show about nothing could accidentally become about something. Number 2, Growing Pains, Isridua. Kirk Cameron rewrote. We have talked before on this channel about Growing Pains and the late arrival of a young Leonardo DiCaprio as Luke Brower in the show's final season. But there is a whole other story about Growing Pains that is far stranger and far more consequential than any Cousin Oliver situation. By the late 80s, Kirk Cameron had undergone a significant religious conversion and had become a born-again Christian with very specific views about the content of the show he was starring in. And Kirk Cameron was the star. Mike Seaver was the beating heart of Growing Pains, and Cameron knew exactly how much leverage that gave him. What followed was an extended behind-the-scenes battle that resulted in storylines being rewritten, characters being altered, and at least one female cast member being let go from the show after Cameron objected to her presence. Julie McCullough, who played Mike's girlfriend Julie Costello, was fired in 1991 after Cameron reportedly objected to her having posed in Playboy before joining the cast. Several episodes from this period of the show circulate in syndication in forms that differ noticeably from their original broadcasts. Dialogue was altered, storylines softened, and in some cases, entire episodes were restructured to accommodate Cameron's objections to content he found incompatible with his beliefs. It is one of the most unusual cases in sitcom history, not a network pulling content for legal or moral reasons from above, but a star effectively reshaping a show from the inside through the force of his convictions and the leverage of his popularity. The Growing Pains. You can watch Today as in several meaningful ways, not entirely the growing pains that was originally made. Number 1. Different Strokes. Sure, The Bicycle Man. Returns, the full story of a show that became a warning. We touched on The Bicycle Man earlier, but Different Strokes earns the top spot on this list because the show's history with dark, disappeared, and deeply uncomfortable content goes far beyond any single episode. Consider what happened to the child cast of this show. Gary Coleman, Dana Plato, and Todd Bridges all faced serious personal and legal struggles following their time on Different Strokes. The pattern was disturbing enough that the so-called Different Strokes curse became genuine tabloid shorthand throughout the 1980s and 90s for the dangers of child stardom. But the episode that truly defines this list is the Season 7 two-parter, The Hitchhiker, which aired in 1985. In it, Sam, the younger character added to the show in its later seasons, accepts a ride from a stranger. What follows is a depiction of the early stages of child abduction and abuse that was even more direct and more harrowing than The Bicycle Man, 2 years earlier. NBC again worked with child safety organizations to produce the content responsibly. The episodes were designed to teach children exactly what to do if they found themselves in a dangerous situation with an adult they didn't know. In that educational context, they were effective and arguably important. But the combination of the subject matter, the later reputation of the show, and the sheer discomfort of watching what amounts to a detailed dramatization of child predation in the context of a light family sitcom made these episodes essentially impossible to program in syndication. Different Strokes and Reruns became by necessity a different show than the one that originally aired. The episodes that defined its most serious ambitions, the ones that tried to use the platform of a hit sitcom to address real dangers facing real children, those are the ones that quietly disappeared, replaced in rotation by the funnier, lighter, easier episodes that didn't require a content warning and a conversation afterward. The tragic irony is that a show so dedicated to protecting children through its very special episodes became better known in the years that followed for what happened to the children who starred in it. That is not a punchline. It is just a sad, complicated piece of television history that deserves to be remembered clearly. And that is our countdown. 12 sitcom storylines that were banned from reruns, pulled from streaming, or quietly buried by the networks that made them. Some disappeared because of legal issues, some because of content that didn't age well, some because of real-world events that made them impossible to program, and some because a show's legacy got complicated in ways nobody anticipated. The funny thing about television history is that the episodes that get pulled are often the most revealing ones, the ones that show exactly what a show was willing to do, what a network was afraid of, and what a particular moment in time looked like from inside a writer's room.